Let's play the full moon here. I promise I'll be twice as good tonight. Make up for that little bit of a delay. All right. Just so you know what I have going on coming up. The next. I always have such a hard time with this. Atlantic Highlands. You guys know that I have meetings in Atlantic Highlands that are open to the public, but this time we're going to be focusing on a specific topic called freedom from negative thinking. Okay, and that's anyone that's ever taken that workshop. Anyone ever taken that workshop? No, it's a good one. It's the techniques that help me to learn how to implement the stuff I discover here and actually put it into my life. So it's really a good program. Oh, I'm doing Forest Hills on October 29th. Another client is hosting an event, and she's making it open to the public as well in Forest Hills. So it's a Wednesday night. Yeah, it's at a salon. And your very own musical affirmation. We when we put it up there for Getting It Right Day 2, we sold out in like 24 hours. So we had said that we would put another opportunity together. And so we have selected the date, and the date is November 1st from 12 to 3 in Smithtown. Having done the day a couple of weeks ago, or whenever it was, a week ago, I will tell you it by far exceeded even my expectations. I don't know that I had any expectations, but if I had, they would have been really high. And my expectations that were high were very much exceeded. It was an incredible event, and you know, David is guided and I am guided, so you take these two individuals that are guided and then you let them come up with a musical affirmation with your input, and plus we worked for 3 hours together, all of us. The day blew me away. I could not believe the day. Jeanette was kind enough to host, and I think it was even a surprise for Jeanette.
Really incredible day.
Yeah, all of the people that attended, they're still emailing each other. There are group emails going. The stuff that's happening in their lives as a result of that day and a result of their musical affirmation. It just hasn't ended. The profundity of it is it's fascinating to me. Fascinating to me. So if you're interested in that, that's that date. I know there's been a bunch of people asking when I will be back at Woodloch because they like to plan it in advance. When you go to Woodloch, you have to plan it at the spa. The next dates at the spa are January 16th. It's Martin Luther King weekend, and then I'll be there again on perhaps March 13th if it happens to be a Friday. So for planning purposes, if you're interested in being at the spa when I'm there. I know a lot of clients like to go when I'm there, but the date in March, I think they give you a little dip in price because March, I think, is like their slowest month of the year because it's not an inexpensive place to go. It's a 5-star luxury spa with every amenity under the sun, and you never have to take your wallet out of your pocket the whole time you're there. So it's not inexpensive by any means. So if you do want to look, I think that they do sometimes give you a break in the month of March. Okay? So that's that. Does anybody have any cool whispers from the universe of things that happened since the last time we were together? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh. Up front.
So cool. I belong to Toastmasters. It's a public speaking club. I've been there about a year and a half. I'm the president now. This is what happens if you're there too long. They recruit you for these things. But I did my 10th speech. You do a series of 10 speeches. And I did my 10th speech on unconditional love, and you were mentioned throughout because of one of our sessions that we had together was about my son, so you might recall what I'm talking about. So I was practicing on the way to work, and I just had these little index cards in my hand. So I'm not like squeezing them or doing anything like that, but when I was done, I'm like, okay, I got this. I put them down. And my whole hand was like numb and tingling. And I remember that Saturday when we were doing the Dan Millman thing that you mentioned that sometimes if you're being touched, like physically touched by your guides or, whomever, that's the sensation, because that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's cool. And I immediately thought my grandparents, because they've been coming to me a lot lately. So I didn't think much about it. I do my speech, and this woman comes up to me afterwards, and she had never been there before, and she announces to me that she has psychic abilities, and she says, I just wanted to tell you that she said your mother and father were behind you the whole time you were speaking.
Wow.
But as soon as she said that, I was like, no, it wasn't my mother and father, those were my grandparents who were behind me the whole time I was speaking.
Wow.
I thought that was the coolest thing.
Wow. I wonder who planted her to be there for you.
I know. She'd never been there before.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah. No,
that's really cool.
I thought that was a good one.
That's a good story. That's a good story.
And then you're right. Is that what
That's
you
one of the
said?
Yeah. The tingling in the fingers and in the hands is oftentimes one of the first ways that clients can acknowledge that their guides are present to them, how they're letting themselves be known physically. Okay. There's a lot of other sensations, but that one seems to be the one that pops up the most often, one that's the most easily recognizable. And also, I think that from a guide's perspective, it's not very intrusive to be able to vibrate the hand cells. You don't feel like you're afraid. But if you're going to start out with right here, oh yeah, I feel you, it might be like, oh, back up. Maybe I don't want to talk to you after all. Yeah, exactly. But the tingling of the hands, it's gentle, it's not invasive, and then when you start to accept the sensation, then the sensation can grow, and then you can experience it in different ways without fear, because you already know what it feels like to have that physical connection, that physical sensation of them being there with you. And one of the reasons I love the sharings is for exactly that, because I'm not going to say everything at every seminar, and you're not going to come to every seminar, so the more we get to explore how other people are interacting and knowing and interpreting their guides, the more you know the limitless possibilities of ways that you can interact with them and know them directly as well. Marie?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I've had a sensation on occasion, maybe other people have had this same sort of thing, where, I may be, sitting in my car, getting ready to go, or in a place where I feel like I'm not really here kind of thing, like almost as if I thought about it too much, like I could drop my body and just take off while I'm awake. So I don't know if you've heard of that before, or if you can give me any information about that. Am I really?
I used to experience it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is, it's just having kind of like a conscious knowingness of you being separate from your body.
That's it, yeah.
So it's only like being in a safe place,
mm-hmm.
knowing that your consciousness is separate from your body so that you can experience it. What's interesting is I remember a couple of times in the beginning that it happened, and I almost felt like my body was paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I'm disengaged. My brain and my consciousness and my body are disengaged. I feel almost like I'm paralyzed because I'm not moving anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got the idea that if you want to move something, you can.
Mm-hmm.
But if you choose not to, you can get yourself deeper into the state of consciousness that you're in. And once I reminded myself of that logically, I could actually separate more without
mm-hmm.
fear. The only thing that makes us feel afraid is that we're experiencing something that's unknown. And it's interesting, too, because then I also played around with telling different parts of my body to move without trying to break the sensation of separateness. That's not easy to do. Because I always tell you about snapback. Snapback is really, it happens very, very quickly. The second you realize that you're separating from your body, or the second you're having an experience that's visceral with your guides, you snap right back and this did not happen, I can't do this, I'll never do this, I'll never do it again, other people can do this but I don't have the capability, and snapback just keeps reverting you back to your human construct, believing that this is not possible. So if you keep experiencing that, tell yourself little things. I'm going to move my thumb, and then just move your thumbs, but stay in the consciousness. That way you're aware that you're in total control of your body, even while your mind is not seemingly connected to it any longer.
For me, I actually feel like my body is still moving.
And
like
you're
I could,
separate
and I could just, like, you know,
yes.
go some other place.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Let that
as well.
just sort of, you know, let the body do whatever the heck it's got to do.
That's so funny. I totally hear you, because I've had that happen
weird,
as well.
but yeah.
Yeah, I've had that happen too, and that's another form of it, that another view of your separateness. There's a lot of ways we can have that separateness become an awareness. One is by feeling disconnected from our body and feeling like our body is lifeless. Another one is having our body have a life of its own that's separate from us.
That's it, yes.
Another thing is rising above the body and witnessing the body in a dream or otherwise, or in a state of meditation. Being outside and looking at yourself is another way. And all of those are forms of validation that we are not our bodies. So anytime you experience any little bit of it, it's fantastic, because it gives you one more opportunity to see that you're getting closer and closer to being able to separate from whatever beliefs you have that are encumbering you here, and be more able to access your eternal wisdom. I think that's great. And I think when you're in a group that talks about stuff like this, then what happens to you, it's not scary. You know, if you don't have anyone to share with or talk to, you could be really afraid when this stuff happens. And fear is what opens the door to those stories that we hear, which are not true, about, you know, bad things happening. Bad things can't happen when you're separated from your body. They can't. But fear will help us to project or interpret the experience in a way that appears negative, and it really is not negative. So sharing makes you feel comfortable. And once you have one experience, it makes it a little bit easier each time to open up that door to recreate that experience, or to open up new pathways to interact with your guides. I think that's awesome. Cool. Anyone else? That's it. Wow. Yes, Anthony?
Well, this is actually a two-parter. It started last year. I don't remember dates about a lot of things besides my own birthday. But last October 8th last year, you spoke at the Eyes of Learning. And that started...
Wow, that's a year ago, huh?
Yeah, a year ago.
Interesting.
Well,
Thank you.
2 months after that, a whole chain of events, including JD, and I went to St. Louis. All these things started happening. They were all very connected. They were all synchronized. So a week and a half ago, you started Saturday with Dan Millman, and it started again. So this vortex is actually opened again. And basically, your teaching that day was exactly what I've been asked to put a curriculum together about, is the mind, body, and soul, or spirit. And so all of a sudden, your event comes up, something on Sunday, something last night, and one thing I have like 4 or 5 other events in the next 2 weeks, all based on the same thing. So the synchronicity of them, I can't make it up, I just can show up. That's all I have to do. Collect the information, know that I'm very specific. And
I remember before I started doing all this, I mean, I was a huge skeptic. I was a doubting Tom. I didn't believe anything anybody ever said. And anyone that talked about anything spiritual, I thought they were flaky, honestly. I really did. I had no use for them. I was very judgmental. You put on a pair of love beads and you're really out of my circle of friends, that's for sure. And so what was really interesting for me is then to have my connection be recalled, if you will. I see it more of a connection. I'm not learning anything. I'm just recalling what I already knew. When I started to recall and I started to witness the power of the mind and the body and the spirit connectedness, you know, now I listen to mind, body, spirit, and to me it's all of the power and explanation about our wholeness in human form. And if you leave any member out of the equation, you're going to be off balance in some form or another. There's going to be some area or many areas of your life that are going to falter, and you're going to be tripping over yourself all the time. So it's fascinating to me that, you know, here I was so doubtful and so skeptical in the beginning, and now I'm talking about mind, body, spirit as though I'm talking about 2 + 2 is 4, 2 + 2 is 4. And get on board with it, because that's the fact and that's the way that it is. But I notice with what is happening is that there are a lot of people who are finding ways to invite spiritual conversation and having vehicles that people can open up to that are becoming more mainstream, even if they used to be considered, flaky or whatever else I was thinking. But in addition to those arenas, which is like yoga, meditation, and Reiki, and crystals, and numerology, and astrology, and all of the real benefits we can get from all of those, there's a huge opening out there for people who want these truths unlocked, but they want it to be unlocked through logic. And there's a huge, huge, huge gap there, a huge gap. I remember when I started this, and my guides would start to tell me little things, and they're like, well, you're going to bridge the gap between the eternal and earth. You're going to bridge the gap between the earth and eternal. And then they would start to say, you're going to bridge the gap between the logic and the spiritual. And they would say this to me all the time, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm willing to listen at this point at least. And sure enough, I remember someone said it clearly. Like 5 years ago, I was doing a session with a guy, and he had turned all of this stuff off, in and out, the way I had before I started. So for whatever reason, he had a session with me that he was putting himself out there, right? And at the end of the session, he's like, you're like the psychic for the SUV driver. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, normal people doing normal things. I'm like, oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. That will be the tagline on my website, the psychic for the SUV driver from now on. I think everyone will get it. But I thought it was pretty funny because it's not, there is no separateness of where the information is going to bring any of us to. But our pathway into uncovering the information is going to be different if we perceive ourselves as being logical and analytical and really valuing academics and the mind and what we perceive as being rational, than if you are, hey, creative, and that feels good, or that resonates, or yeah, this is how I feel. Some people can enter from that side, but there's a lot of people that cannot enter from that side. But we're only going to a place where we all are going to understand that we are all in the middle of both. However you express it or however you get in there isn't as relevant as being there. And that's the key. This seems to come up in sessions a lot with people, but if you meet someone who is telling you that they have the key to your wisdom or your happiness or your enlightenment, and then they give you a set of rules to get there, just very quickly say goodbye. Because there are no rules to get there. There are pathways. There are opportunities for discovery. There are a million ways to get back to the same information that you knew when you were born. There is no right way. There is no wrong way. There are just many different ways. And as much as you can go out there and meet somebody in the corporate world or meet someone in politics that has an ego, you can meet people in the spiritual community with egos as well. And there are a lot of people who enter into a particular path or vehicle in the spiritual world because they're trying to overcome their personal challenges. And one of the ways that they do that is by having information that you don't have access to so that you have to come to them for it because it makes them feel that they are worthy because they didn't feel worthy in their upbringing or in their adulthood. So it's only up to you to determine if what somebody is saying or how something has to be done is resonating with you. Because people are still people. You're the only one that can determine if their conduit or their pathway is clear and connected. You're the only one that can determine that. The more someone says have to, should, or must, the more I would get the heck out of there. There's nothing you must do. And there's nothing you should do, and there is nothing you have to do. But there might be some things you want to try, because we're all aiming to get rid of our masks and layers. So here's some things if you would like to try them. And not everything is going to be right for every person. Like even in Freedom from Negative Thinking, I talk about 8 techniques in that program. And I give you lots and lots of information about how to use those 8 techniques. Did I use all 8 techniques when I started? No, I didn't. Some of them didn't do it for me. Didn't mean they were wrong, but I used 3, and those 3 changed my life. And once in a while I'll get a phone call or an email from someone who took the program, and they're talking about how a different one changed their lives in a day or a week or a month. And I'm like, wow, that one didn't work for me. That's kind of cool, and it works for you. How neat. But that's the whole point. It doesn't matter how you get there. Just enter, have the intention, have the focus, and then stick with it. And if a particular tool doesn't work, don't give up. Don't blame yourself. Don't see yourself as being flawed. Find another technique. There's plenty of them out there. That is why I will oftentimes remind people that I don't meditate and I don't like to meditate. Because if meditating were the only pathway for me to be where I am today, I wouldn't be where I am. Because I hate it. So, therefore, I'm not going to do it. Did I feel like a failure? You know what I felt like when I would try it? I felt like I was the only person on earth that couldn't quiet my mind. And so I felt less than. I did think maybe there was something about me that everybody else knew that I didn't know. And so, yeah, I felt like I should be able to do this. I didn't have anyone say, hey, listen, try this or this or this or this or this. I hate meditating too. It doesn't matter what works for you, but just keep trying things until you find the thing that does work. And it might be the perfect combination of a bunch of stuff. It might be acupressure plus meditation plus walking your dog. It might be being alone 2 days a month plus massage plus reading some really good books. Whatever combination it is that works for you, if you are interested in it, you'll stick with it. If you are not interested in it, you will not engage. So what good is it anyway if you're not going to engage in it, right? I remember I was pretty old. I was in my 20s. The first time I chose not to finish reading a book. I don't know what was more torturous, the damn book or me choosing not to finish reading it. But it was like I had this thing where you always have to finish a book. You always have to finish a book. That made me a good person, right? And you only get smart if you finish the book. If you don't finish the book, you're giving up, right? And you're lazy. So I finished every book, no matter how bad those books were when I was growing up. And so I remember I was in my 20s, and I'm like 3/4 of the way through this book, and this book is horrible. And then I glanced ahead, and I looked at one chapter I was on, and that chapter was 32 pages. And I'm like, I can't get through 32 pages just to get through this chapter. And I put it down, and I never read it again. But it was weird how long it took me to decide that it wasn't right for me. But we don't believe we have choices. We have all these silly little things that other people have told us. Make us good or make us worthy or are right. And don't do things wrong. You got to do things the right way. It's not true. It's really not true. It's not. There are, I'm not one do I talk about the benefit of holistic healing and alternative remedies and the mind-body-spirit connection? Definitely. Would I ever tell someone not to go to a doctor or try something with Western medicine or take a prescription? No, I'm not going to tell you that. Because if you believe that one pathway is going to reharmonize your body, as long as you believe that that's your personal cure, no matter what you try outside of that, you are not going to reharmonize your body. Because in the back of your mind, you're going to think that's the cure. So do that and try other stuff too if you're curious, but it's not about what's right or wrong. It's about discovering. And if you happen to try Western and you try something Eastern and you feel better with the Eastern, then you have a different opportunity to have validation that there is a different way to perceive this. Does that make sense? I shared this story with one person who's in this room, so sorry you have to sit through it again. You'll know who you are. But when I wrote the newsletter, I have to wait and listen to what the guys are going to say because I don't write the newsletters. The guys write the newsletters, and sometimes it's a little hard for me as a human, kind of like, I don't want to sit down at the computer because I have nothing I want to write. So therefore, I have to force myself to sit at the computer and hope the guys will come in and write something. So that's not always the easiest thing to do, even after all of this time. So sometimes I'll procrastinate sitting down at the computer because I don't have anything I want to write. But it happens every single time. So finally, I sat down at the computer, and normally they'll give me something that I can go right into, and oftentimes they'll title the essay after we're finished, so that I don't have to they don't want me thinking about writing about the topic, right? They just want to give it to me. But on occasion, they'll give me the title, and then the flow just comes through anyway. Like, they'll always know which approach. But so anyway, so I'm going to sit down and write the essay, and the title that they gave me was really funny. But did anyone read the newsletter from yesterday? Does anybody remember what the title was? Just tell me if you think this was the title.
Yeah. I saw it in the inbox. Haven't gotten there yet.
So anyway, so I'm there, and I have I don't have anything at all that I can think to write about, and it's not my job. So, but it's still hard to sit there and have nothing. I've got nothing.
Wait, you got the right marker?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Good memory. Okay, so here's the title they gave me. That's the title they gave me. And I'm like, wow. I usually like to try to give a positive slant. But, I'll work with you here. And as I'm listening to the title, I think it's the funniest thing in the world because it is so true. It is so true. And who knows, maybe one day I'll start writing a little bit more, controversial, shall we say. But, I don't, huh?
That's very funny.
I don't know that people are ready for this yet. Right? Do you think that they are? I think this room is ready, which is why I can say it here.
Yeah, people aren't ready for that.
But if I wrote that as the title of a book or something like that, I don't think people are quite ready. But
I don't know. I think it was so. Yeah.
It is 100% true. That's what makes it so interesting.
They gave you that first before you even wrote, like anything. That's the first thing you.
That's what they did.
And how did they switch from that to?
I had to sit back and kind of like dialogue a little, and I had to get over the humor of it. And of course I thought about it too. Like, is it true? Yeah, it is true. Oh wow, really? Oh wow, that is profound. And I thought, I was doing my thing too, right? And I didn't really think they would, make me write an essay with that as the title, because I do, like to try to stay on the positive slant. But then I recognize that there are so many people that the only way you can bring them into positive information is through a negative hook. And or a shock. And when I continue to get out there to wider and wider audiences, maybe on occasion I'll have to use a negative hook to bring people into something entirely positive. And because that's what captures attention, that's what makes people pay attention. And on occasion, you're going to have to do that because people aren't thinking. Why is it that when someone tries to start a great news channel or a good news channel, they don't necessarily succeed economically? Because there's no allure. There's nothing that feels so compelling that I have to finish watching this show, or I have to hear, good news at 11. I have to watch what is that good news, how did the boy save the dog? We're not compelled. But something like this is compelling because you're processing a bombardment of information about Ebola and terrorists constantly now. So it's like, wow, really? Fear is going to kill you long before you pull a terrorist. It really makes you think. But when I was, after they finally, stopped joking about it, and I wrote the real essay.
I was thinking, how'd you go from this to top down?
Top down living. But what they made me, yeah, it was a little bit of a jump. So if you ever see that as the subject line for a newsletter, please share it with friends.
I think it's great. I think people need to hear that.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. You really should. I could, go next to Bill O'Reilly and do that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
really.
Because
They're out of control.
Yeah,
Music archies are out of control.
they are out of control.
Wouldn't that be great?
But what it brings me to realizing is there are so many times in this group that I say, one of the cool things about this group is I'm allowed to say things here that I'm not allowed to say in public. And even when I say I'm not allowed to say, I'm just exaggerating here. But I would choose not to say certain things outside of this group that I do choose to say. And I know that when I was slowly removing masks and layers, and I was slowly having aha moments, and I was slowly moving toward peace and happiness and sustainable feelings of joy and a comprehension of reality and understanding how we operate. The little stuff that they would give me on a day-to-day basis, the techniques that I would learn and that I would implement, they were incredibly helpful. But what I found is that in order to get where I wanted to go, and I still didn't know where I wanted to go, I just knew I wanted to be out of pain. Okay, so I didn't have a goal. I didn't have the language to even know there was somewhere in particular to go. But what I discovered is that knowing what's possible and then taking the steps and the techniques as an earthly person on a regular basis on a day-to-day level, if you bring them both together, you get there faster, okay? But if you only do this one by one, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that, I'm going to change this, you're going to get there. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. If you know what's possible or you understand like the overall way that we're here and we're living, it makes the steps to get there make more sense, right? It's a little bit like Karate Kid when what's his name? Wax on, wax off. Some of the things that the boy was asked to do didn't make any sense to him, but he did them because he already had faith in his sensei. If we're asked to do them and we don't have a sensei that we have faith in, then we're not necessarily going to commit because we don't understand the value of what it is that we're doing. But if your sensei is truth, if your sensei is how good it can be and how good it can get, then taking the steps is more easy to commit to because you know where you're going and you have faith that these steps will get you there. So what they wound up writing about was essentially top-down living was exactly this topic, except it was put in a kind of less negative title. But it was about understanding how life works. This is helping you to understand how life works. The only reason Ebola and terrorists exist to begin with on Earth at all is because of human fear. Human fear created Ebola. Human fear created terrorism. That's what created it. We all created it together. And the more we are afraid and we run away and we blame people and we say that you're responsible and you have to keep me safe and you have to keep me well, the more we do that, the more fear we add into it. So we're creating new Ebolas. So we're creating new terrorist cells. We're creating new ways for people to kill each other. That's what fear does. This is a reflection of fear. It's not a consequence of this. Fear is not a consequence. Fear is the beginner. Fear is the creator. Fear is the one that makes everything that we don't want begin. The consciousness of fear is an energy that creates the bad stuff that we battle against. that one simple thought can change the whole world. But you have to be able to reach enough people with the comprehension that we are not victims. We are not in experiences in the physical realm where things happen at us. Things happen with us. They don't happen to us. They happen with us. Sometimes I hear people say, if I'm understanding that it's happening for me, I feel better about it. It's not happening for you either. It's happening with you. With you. It's not at you or to you or for you. It's with you. That's how life happens. It happens with you. And it happens with everybody on the planet, and it happens with every soul that's ever lived in human form on this planet since the beginning of time. We are all co-creating our reality with the projection of our conscious energy. So every time anyone turns to the government to be protected, they're moving them away from connecting with their eternal selves and moving them closer to becoming earth-dependent on other sources of power other than themselves. So we're in a cycle right now where the encouragement of dependency is off the charts. And as long as that continues, there is going to be enough people that are agitated that start to feel the loss of control or self-empowerment, and they're going to have to rebel to get their power back. And to rebel means that they have to revolt, and to revolt means a revolution, and a revolution means violence. But if we don't get to the point that we have to rebel, if we can stay in our energy flow and perceiving the possibility of things getting more harmonious, and we can change the stuff that we have any influence over little by little, then we can create an evolution instead of a revolution. But if you stay out of everything you know to be untrue, if you stay out of all of it without ever objecting or ever commenting or ever doing something differently or ever breaking a rule, then you're allowing that energy to continue to grow. So if someone came to me and said, the government did not do enough to keep Ebola out of our country, and here's what they should be doing. I wouldn't just walk away and say, yeah, I can see your point. I'm not going to do that because I don't believe it to be true. I don't think that Ebola is going to come into our country unless we invite it in. And we invite it in through the magnet of fear. So we sense the invitation. Don't turn to your government to break the invitation. The government's not going to break it. They don't know how to break it because they don't know how it started to begin with. If we all collectively sent an invite and now they're here, don't invite them in the future if you don't want them here. And the way to not invite them is to be whole, to be happy, to know your own power, to know that you are a mind and a body and a spirit that is in the driver's seat of your own experience. Even if you're co-creating, the more you're in the know, the more your energy in the co-creation process influences the outcome of your journey. The less you're in the know, the more the co-creation energy of other people will influence the outcome of your projection. Does everyone understand that?
Can you say that again?
It's a big point to understand, so I don't mind restating it because conceptually it changes your way of viewing. If you are asleep, everything around you is going to create your reality. You're going to have very little input into what your reality looks like. Okay? If you're awake, you're going to be the primary energy in the projection of what your day-to-day life and experiences are. There's a lot of power in being awake. There's a lot of power in what comes into your circle. I know I talk about this kind of thing all. Am I going to get Ebola? If there's a massive outbreak in New York City and I'm spending the day in New York City, am I going to get it? No. No, I'm not. I'm not going to get it. I have not invited it in. I don't believe there's any benefit in me having that experience. I'm not afraid of it. It has no relevancy in my experience whatsoever. I opted out.
Well, can I ask you, I have no clue what Ebola is, so that's why I asked the question. So now that, like I know it's something, like, I don't know, something, so like not knowing, is it better that I not know, or do I have to know about it so I can deflect it?
No, the fact that you don't know shows that you're in a place of more harmony, because you're not seeking out information that's going to be producing fear for you all the time. If you don't know about it, and you don't have any curiosity to really know about it other than just what is it, like, oh, what is that, right? Then stay where you are. It's not about hiding or ignorance. It's that you're not inviting in the need to even test how afraid the possibility of it could be for you. Okay? All right. It actually is 8 o'clock right now, so I think that this is a good time to pause, mingle, make a friend, and have a cup of coffee. and we'll come back in a few minutes.